Super excited about this conference and to learn from people far smarter than me. But yeah, hopefully this will be helpful. And this talks about the path to 10 million plus creators on Rapchat. All right. Hi, I'm Seth. I started Rapchat in 2013 in my dorm room. Really my only job, real job to date. Been a ton of fun. I've worn a lot of different hats. Still do, much to JJ, my COO's despise. But yeah, I just have a passion for building things that people use and love and helps them create. So Rapchat is the easiest way to make music on your phone. We're one of the top music apps in the App Store. And yeah, we have over 10 million creators. And a lot of awesome vocal effects. So if anyone wants to make a song today, maybe we'll do a breakout room session and get it going. All right, how do you grow? It's a very simple question. If you've seen The Departed, this is like one of my favorite scenes in The Departed. And kind of the essence of like any app business, but a lot of people struggle to answer this question, me being one of them. I mean, it took me years to kind of answer this succinctly, and this is kind of what this talk is all about. Just one kind of key nugget that's really been a huge unlock for us this year and how I think about growth. So lay it out in a simple equation. Major shouts to Andy Johns, who was a growth expert at Wealthfront, I think now in VC. But know your basic growth equation. So again, breaking it down just as simple as possible. Top of funnel, magic moment, core product value, sustainable growth. Not too dissimilar to what we just saw with Lose It, how they bring free users in, they get them to activate with that core value, and then they activate them into a subscription. This probably is also like synonymous with the pirate metrics or a lot of just basic funnel analyses I'm sure many people are familiar with. But this is kind of the inputs into like any basic equation, or at least one of my favorite kind of frameworks for that. So we spent a lot of time and broke down our own equation in Rapchat. And this is kind of what it looks like. And it's still evolving, right? So all this is a work in progress. But, new installs, how many of them sign up, how many of them activate. So that's like a really key thing, which I'll get into more. But what is your activation like event or moment? And I'll explain what ours is, how many of them come back, and then how many of them do we convert to subscriptions. So this literally explains our entire business. And the two things that we're really looking at on a weekly basis, or just in general, is weekly active creators and monthly recurring revenue. The thing that's really cool about pairing the revenue piece with this is that, the weekly active creators are very high intent to convert. And oftentimes that's where you can, show some of those special offers. That's where you can give them a lot of, different types of carrots to convert. And so it kind of ties into the revenue piece as well, which is important because we went years without making money and that was really stressful. So now we're in a much better spot. All right, so how did we discover this? Again, it seems like a simple question, but it's actually like quite complex and, requires quite a lot of work to get it right. So one thing we did was ran a version of the product market fit engine survey. Super popular now, and I linked to it here, but the CEO of Superhuman basically took this one question that Sean Ellis came up with around like how disappointed would you be if you could no longer use my product, and created this whole framework around like discovering what customers wanted. So we ran our own version of that, and I think that's an important also just piece of context. Like we took some of the questions and made them our own and even added some. And then we ran it through Instabug. So we got a really high response rate, over 5,000 responses. So definitely recommend like using some sort of in-app tool other than email because our response rate was so high. So yeah, 5,000 plus responses 1 quarter later. And we typically do this every quarter. So we stay in tune with what our users want, who they are, And these were some of the critical unlocks that surface up to that equation. So one was to focus on creators. Since we are a pretty fun app, a lot of people come to the app on a daily basis organically, but not all of those people have high intent. And I think this helped us kind of tease out like who our most high intent users are. So those happen to be creators. So focus on that. So already a subset of the overall user base. Activation in the first week is equal to, making one track or having 5 studio sessions. Again, a huge piece of nuance, because for years we just thought like, oh, if they make a song, upload a song in their first week, they're activated. But then as we dug into the data, it's like, well, a lot of people have studio sessions that don't finish, but they're still very high intent. And we were missing that in our data. So having that kind of OR there for the activation event was key. And then retention, just coming back and kind of doing that same thing. So you can see here, this is just like a screenshot that you probably can't read, but of a Notion doc where I just went through, and after having all the qualitative and some quantitative data, just pose questions like, what's the activation rate? What's the activation event? And then match that up in amplitude, and you'll see like pretty much here, validating it with cohort curves. So a lot of people, if you look at like a generic, weekly retention, monthly retention, it can be discouraging sometimes if you don't see the flat line that, everyone talks about. But a lot of times you need to actually dig in and find a subset of users that do flatline. And I guarantee like there are. So for us, it was like finding different events, putting them into amplitude, and then actually comparing like, okay, if you did 1 studio session, if you did 2, and then putting those all compared to each other on one chart. That's how we came up with that studio session or track created. But you can see here, like there's some other good flat lines too. And one thing to look out when you're doing this is obviously you want that flat line to be a significant volume of the cohort that's coming in. So, if I put in 20 studio sessions, it would have been like 90% like yearly retention, but that's like 2% of the user base. So, it has to be a significant volume, and that's kind of how we ended up there. And again, this is all about unlocking clarity. Like I've been doing this since my dorm room, so like 9 years, but we've been live in the App Store for like 6. And, we've tracked hundreds of millions of data points. We've raised a few rounds of funding. We've, learned quite a bit and talked to a lot of, experts and stuff. And sometimes there's just this like messy middle of data, and you're like, how the hell are we actually growing? Like what's going on? This simple equation brought a ton of clarity. And yes, now we're back in Google Sheets as our core dashboard. But it was really helpful to create just a simple Google Sheet that like, we broke it into buckets, and there's probably like, 15 metrics on it, all related to that equation. And so we cover this every week. And it's really cool because obviously it's a simple overarching equation, but there's like 100 mini equations that go into each input. So, the marketing team can impact the top of funnel or bringing people back with challenges and in-app events. The UA team, which JJ's a part of right now, can look at like the performance of some of the advertising channels, or how much did we spend? Like we put weekly budget in here. So again, it's a simple dashboard, but it drives a lot of clarity and alignment for the entire team. And it being in Google Sheets, I think is actually like a little more accessible for everyone. Amplitude and some of these tools can be, for people that aren't trained on them, can be a little intimidating. So we still use all the other fancy tools, of course, but this is now like, if you ask me how my business is doing, I just like go to this, and I can look at it on a weekly basis. And it kind of provides like a change log for the company performance too. So that's like the last key point. Like every week we can put in annotations like, okay, bump marketing spend up, shipped iOS update, trying growth experiment, and that can all get in each week. So really helpful tool for us. And then this is, I think, also stolen from Andy Johns, but like growth is really just accounting for users and customers in and out. The same way the finance team is looking at the cash in and out. And this is kind of like how that equation translates into this every week. New plus retained plus resurrected, minus, that should be a minus, but well, doesn't matter. Plus churned weekly active creators. So, that kind of gives us that baseline, like, is our number going up or are we going down? And then here's a screenshot from sample MAU growth accounting, really good blog post from Social Capital on how they do this a little more in depth. So what is your growth equation? Hit me up. I'd love to learn about it. I have so much fun like trading these learnings with other founders and operators with apps. Or if you need help uncovering yours, I just went through like a 3-month process of getting to this point. So that's my email, and hope to meet some really great people throughout the rest of the day, and super excited about some of their talks. I just wanted to throw one last section in here. Rapid fire alerting. So these are unformatted. I got just a few minutes, and I don't know, thought some of these might be helpful. Sorry, that was a little tease there, but. All right, ask your users during onboarding what they want. I mean, probably a lot of the shit I'm covering seems really obvious, right? But I promise, like, you lose track of that when you have all this data going on in all these teams. So sorry if it is super obvious, but these are things that like I need reminded of all the time. And I don't know, thought it might be helpful to share here. So yeah, just ask them, like a crazy concept. Like, what do you want to do in this app? I mean, we went like 4 years, millions of downloads, and it never did that. So we started doing this last year. Like, what brought you here? What do you want to do? And try and tease out the different types of creators and the different types of intent that they have. Because again, that marries to our analytics, that marries to our campaigns. And it's like such a lower effort, high leverage activity in general, just to get more insight into who's coming to your app on a daily basis. Especially when you have a lot of organic users, kind of like the weight loss app as well. Super important just to ask them. And we plan to like add like 10 more screens in onboarding. And it's not super novel anymore either. I mean, Noom and some of these other companies are doing really long onboardings for a reason. Enable viral loops through UGC. Again, obvious, but unlock ways for users to share content from your app to outside the app. I think even with post IDFA, having an organic lever is a lot more important. And we're lucky enough people are creating music and media content, and that's easy to share. But and when we allowed people to share these songs externally and people to play them externally, that was like a true 10x feature, which those happen like once every few years. Anyways, I realize not everyone's, as fortunate to have like a music making app where you're sharing like actual things you make. But I put in a couple tweets here that were like, even just add a screenshot tracking in your app and throw a watermark on there. Like you can do that on iOS. We still haven't got to it, but I want to do it. And the Time Hop founder is like, we started measuring that and it was 10x. So find a unique way to do that. Avoid generic metrics. I kind of already covered this, but like, typically like MAUs or even MRR, which we do have, like they're very generic. Like find something that fits your business. I saw pounds lost in the last presentation. And it's just like way more interesting for your team too. Again, I went years like following all these blog posts. I'm like, well, we need to track day one retention and weekly active users. And like, it just doesn't resonate with the rest of your team. So this is an example from Spotify. Ignore benchmarks, find relative ones. I don't know why I put this picture in here. I just thought it was kind of funny. But like, again, we all probably consume the same blog posts and podcasts, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I, drop some frameworks, but like in the benchmark posts, like honestly, a lot of the data is typically shit. Like that's just like what it is. Like it's lacking context, and like one team tracks retention differently than another team, and we all probably track the same metric differently between our teams. So don't get discouraged by these blog posts. I know for a while I did, comparing our numbers. Just compare them to yourself or your peers, or use them as more like directional, but not, source of truth. And then I think this is the last one. Look at data through dimensions. again, probably like super obvious for the really sophisticated analysts in here, but if you don't even break it down by like country, right? Like we're doing a trial conversion experiment. If you don't break that down by country when you're looking at the analytics, it's all blended. It'll be totally messy. So, I think, again, super obvious, but a lot of times in amplitude, like the default is all users on any chart. So, it's tedious to go in and be like, okay, we'll separate out Android, iOS, US, who had this onboarding, what version. But if you don't do that, then like all of your learnings like won't be that accurate. So, and yeah, learning's a superpower. Obviously, I love learning. I'm super excited for everyone else's talks, to meet a bunch of you all. And these were some of the influences, but I could fill up 50 slides with everyone who's like really helped me either directly or indirectly. All right. Thank you, everyone.